my channel. My name is Isabel and welcome back to my beloved section, Give Space a Chance. You know the drill. In this segment, I pick books that I really like and I think that more people should read, but that often have a prejudice against them because they're classics, because they're too long, because they kind of sound boring. So I'm going to try to convince you to give The Age of Innocence by Edith Worthen a chance. When you hear The Age of Innocence, you might think of that fabulous 1993 film starring Winona Ryder and Michelle Pfeiffer. Great film. Or you might have heard of Edith Worthen in a high school American lit class, or you were searching for the best American writers of all times and she popped up. No? But in case you haven't heard of her or her novel, let's see why you need to read it, because you actually need to read this. Our author, Edith Worthen, was the very first female to win the Pulitzer Prize for Fiction in 1921 because of this novel. Written about the 1870s, Worthen takes us back to an era of imminent change and the rejection of the same by the upper class of New York. If you have ever been in the melting pot that New York is, it will be strange for you to think of it as this very oppressive society full of etiquette and almost aristocratic families out of a European court. However, The Age of Innocence is one of what I like to call an anthropological novel, in the sense that it shows you how this ancient civilization lived and worked, and how all the components of its society work into make an instrumental of all those moral codes, because for them that's how their society kept working and that's how they like to keep it. However, all those moral codes seem so ancient to us that here we have them in a novel when they seem so foreign and strange. All of our cast thinks about these moral codes as the rigid way of being, except Countess Olenska. Her arrival to New York is what sets in motion this story, because she comes after being married to a foreign European count, looking for refuge in her American family and also for support because she wants a divorce from him. This is a big no in New York society, because they put a big value on family, on reputation, on what is proper, and Countess Olenska is not gonna find a lot of support here, unfortunately. But with this segment, I want to take you to the major themes of why you should read this book. Marriage and family. For our modern lives, a good marriage means a marriage of happiness, of equal terms, of faithfulness in the majority of the cases. In this novel, however, a good marriage implies the connection of two very wealthy families, respectables, to set a man their position in their society, produce heirs, and that's pretty much it. Other than that, the man can pursue whatever he wants, whoever he wants, and the woman is supposed to stay at home with the kids, entertain visitors, and whatnot. This is rooted in the education of men and women and what is expected of them as members of a society. This novel is really an expose of how those values and that education actually don't work if you want to believe in a heterosexual marriage. Because honestly, men and women are brought up to not be compatible. What females tend to care about and what they're trained to do has nothing to do what men are going to do or what they're interested in. But women are supposed to entertain and know the very fashion and hold up a reputation and hold that house and everything. Men are supposed to pursue philosophical, scientific, and artful interest. They read a lot, they go to plays, they go to Europe to have higher education, and women do not. Therefore, when they come up as a marriage unit, they have nothing in common, nothing to talk about, and nothing to even be friends. How are they supposed to fall in love? Well, that's not what the objective of the marriage unit is in this society. That's why for them, they have this idea of women being dumb or women not being enough for the male counterparts to hold up a conversation. But it's because they are not trained to do so. It's not because the woman herself is dumb or uncurious. It's just because she is following all the steps that she was told to be what a woman is supposed to be. That's why I'm telling you, this novel starts with Countess Olenska comes to New York with all her extravagant ways, because she's a woman that speaks her own mind, who has interests like literature and art, and she's not afraid to break up with protocol, mostly because she's not aware of this protocol. So she acts in a way that is totally free compared to the women that live in New York at this time. And that's why she is so attractive to men. But honestly, to what point is that fair for the women in this society? Because they're doing everything that we're told to. They're doing and suppressing everything that comes natural to them to act in this certain way, because that's how they told them that they were gonna get a good husband and be a good woman. And what point is that fair for any of them? I'm telling you, amazing reflections out of the bat. Another point that is constantly touched upon in this novel is about foreigners and being from somewhere else that is not New York, or being something else that is not American. Actually, it could be well tied to nationalistic views or the pursuit of a national identity in the 1870s, but let's just stick with that word of foreigner. It is repeated all over the place in this novel, and it almost always means something negative. For example, the characters show to be very excited about the contents or anyone that comes from Europe because it is excited to have something different. However, every time that there's something wrong with Ellen, it is because of that exoticness, and it is because of her being foreign. They try to mask this aversion to foreigners by saying that New York society is explicitly boring and that a foreigner would not have a good time with them. But what they actually mean to say is that Americans have this higher moral ground compared to anyone else's, and that's why they're seen as boring. But they're seen as boring because they're actually the good guys, the people that have moral values in this perverted world that is almost turning to the 1900s. And it makes sense because the only way to maintain their archaic lifestyle is to believe this, to believe that they are the last of their species who are actually doing things right. They ostracize themselves, and everything else that doesn't belong to them, it's bad. It is funny to see that because we have this very clear when we read this novel. You see, like, oh my god, all of these people are so archaic. But the only other person that expresses this is Countess Olenska. And she points that out in page 179 of my edition. I'm gonna read it to you. But do you know, they interest me more than blind conformity to tradition. Somebody else's tradition that I see among our own friends. It seems stupid to have discovered America only to make it into a copy of another country. New York society is not interested in being modern. New York society is interested in being better than others. And because being modern is too risque, they are happy with being traditional, if that ensures that they are in a higher position than anyone else is. What they just do is that they just hold on to the values that came with them in the Mayflower, and they are not going to change that. An example of this is the clothes, because it is so inconsequential, but still it's such a topic. Ladies can go to Paris, they buy the clothes there, but when they come back they keep it in storage for like 2 years until it's proper for them to wear that here. Like, they make the new be old just for it to match its people. And I touched upon it before, but let's just briefly talk about the gender dynamics even before marriage. I'll read for you a passage that is in page 72, I believe. It's kind of long. The affair, in short, had been of the kind that most of the young men of his age has been through, and emerged from with calm consciousness and an undisturbed belief in the abysmal distinction between the woman one loved and respected and those one enjoyed and pitied. In his view, they were sedulously abetted by their mothers, aunts, and other elderly female relatives, who all share in Mrs. Archer's belief that when such things happen, it was undoubtedly foolish of the man, but somehow always criminal of the woman. Of the elderly ladies, whom Archer knew regarded any woman who lived imprudently as necessarily unscrupulous and designing, and mere simple-minded man as powerless in her clutches. The only thing to do was to persuade him as early as possible to marry a nice girl and then trust to her to look after him. Because men are useless, because men cannot control their instincts, because if someone has an imprudent affair with anyone that is not proper, then it is mostly the woman's fault because she probably seduced him, right? The worst thing of this part is that those are things that we still hear today. That men are completely innocent of the things that they do because they cannot help themselves, and that women are the ones that need to be restraining themselves and making men respect them, because you need to make them respect you, and not just because you have to be respected because you're a human being. And keep that in mind, that thing of having two types of women, because we do have two female protagonists in this love triangle. The woman that you marry and respect, and the woman that you use and pity. Sadly, out of both, men are the only ones that get a benefit, but the last ones are tossed aside with no prospects. Not enough with that, it is women the ones that perpetrate these misogynist views, and they raise their men with those views itself. And this is why you need to read this book, because you're gonna read it and you're gonna be like, this is so stupid, why would anyone act and believe that? And then you're gonna see that you actually know someone that acts just in the same way. But it is not 1870. These types of situations that the Age of Innocence shows us brings up what is known as the woman question. Our male protagonist, Newland Archer, only wonders about this topic though for the very first time when he falls in love with former fallen woman, Countess Olenska. Because he loves her, he wishes for her to be free to be with him, but he's not progressive enough to actually do anything about it, and to actually open his mind and see that not only she needs to be free, but all women should be free, including May, his bride. And he's not progressive enough to see that the reason why she cannot be happy is because of the institutions and the values that he so ardently represents and believes in. Moreover, this man is just a coward, and I don't like him, but it doesn't make me love this book any less, honestly. He feels entitled to belittle May because she's not like Ellen. And when he cannot see that May might not have Ellen's interest and Ellen's way of living, but she is an interesting person and she has an intellect that she uses very well, I might say. And honestly, Archer's reflection about May is so vile that I need to read it to you. Page 34 and 35. The young man was sincerely but placidly in love. He delighted in the radiant good looks of his betrothed, in her health, her horsemanship, her grace, and quickness in games, and the shy interest in books and ideas that she was beginning to develop under his guidance. Blah, blah, blah. She was straightforward, loyal, and brave. She had a sense of humor, chiefly proved by laughing at his jokes. So he believes she has a sense of humor just because she thinks he is funny, not because she is funny on herself. And he suspected, in the depths of her innocently gazing soul, a glow of feeling that it would be a joy to waken. But when he had gone the brief round of her, he returned discouraged by the thought that all this frankness and innocence were only an artificial product. Untrained human nature was not frank and innocent. It was full of the twists and defenses of an instinctive guile, and he felt himself oppressed by this creation of punctuous purity, so cunningly manufactured by a conspiracy of mothers and aunts and grandmothers and long-dead ancestors, because it was supposed to be what he wanted, what he had a right to, in order that he might exercise his lordly pleasure in smashing it like an image made of snow. You know, Archer. This type of reflections of May, of what women should be, what men are entitled to, of this, May has no fault, neither Countess Olenska. And the way of him saying that this is because other women are perpetuating this and this is not what he wants, is excluding all men who have made women believe that this is what they should be. It's not just because women thought, I'm just gonna oppress my daughters for the fun of it. It always comes from a way of women saying, I want my daughter to have her best chance. And her best chance in this society that they cannot have property or money or anything is for them to be married. And this is what men make them believe that this is what they wanted. And honestly, when May offers him a way out, she's like, you don't have to marry me. He says, nah, I'll still marry you. He's too much of a traditionalist to break this system. He knows that he and May in this institution make sense. And there are many moments when Archer sees himself as the savior of women and that he is the only woke person to see that they are oppressed. The problem is that while he is aware of these oppressions, he makes nothing to stop them. Making a study of both May and Ellen Countess Olenska, would result in seeing how both of them are just trapped in their situations. The final plot twist that makes May the villain in certain ways is the only thing that she can do to make her life better. And is that something that we can villainize her for? Isn't that what Countess Olenska has been trying to do her whole novel? Is that her wanting some type of agency in her life in matrimony something bad, when what we've been talking about is the freedom of women? At the end, obviously, it is not Archer the one that saves women or bring any happiness to any of the women in the story. It is only time what brings change. And that's what the novel concludes with. At the end of the novel, we see that we're not in the 1870s anymore, that a new generation has come, and that they don't care about those traditional values and those institutions that Archer couldn't part away from. It is only those new generations and those new women who can fight against the rigidness that we saw. Not old men who have always beneficiated from these oppressive institutions where they have the upper hand. Now let's talk about the characters. I am not gonna lie to you. You're gonna hate many of them. And it is because they're all dated and frozen in their time. But I find it marvelous because, as I said, this is a kind of like an anthropological study. We don't know these people. We kind of feel so disconnected to them that they barely feel human. And that's why you cannot blame them for the things that they believed in, because they literally don't know anything else and they don't know how wrong they are. I'm sure you're gonna find some moments when you're gonna laugh, some moments when your heart is gonna ache, and some moments when you're just going to be so immersed in the reading that you're gonna forget that you're reading a book. That is the effect of a good novel. It makes your blood boil and it makes your heart ache and it makes you laugh. And it's all here in the Age of Innocence. And honestly, that's how humans are. The majority of us are flawed, biased, uncurious. We like how our lives is and we basically do not do anything to change them. With two great women and an average man that thinks too highly of himself, I think, you're officially invited to give it a chance to the Age of Innocence. This novel, with a love triangle in the backdrop of New York in the 1870s, is as addictive as it is frustrating. It is a device that Edith Worthen used to talk and reflect on a society that evaporated as smoke by the time that she is writing this in the 1920s. It is so worth it that it is so worth it that I think that you can make amazing reflections about this book even if you don't actually like any of them. That is why you should really include this book in your TBR and give it a chance. If you already read this book, and if you'd like to talk more about the themes I mentioned, obviously there are more, I just needed to pick a few, you can totally do that. Leave a comment down below with your opinions and the points that you like or the points that you dislike in the comment section down below. I really enjoy making this type of analysis without giving spoilers, which is harder than you might think. So please give me your opinion on more things that you would like to know for these types of videos or anything else, honestly. I love receiving comments. That's all from me. Thanks for watching. I love this book so much, honestly, that I was dying to make this video. Keep reading, and when you're not, follow me on all my social media linked down below. And I'll see you all very soon. Bye!